Hey there guys, this is Chaos back again. Figuring we're probably going to run out of stuff to say about this build entirely. However, 1.0.4 hit today, and a lot of people have found out one harsh thing. The one thing about this build now is Sprint no longer procs hits for Merciless Assault's cooldown. This is a big change because you guys remember the meat of the Bulldozer Barb build is to have Furious Charge endlessly spam, giving you 195% weapon damage throughout the entire session. And usually even if you hit like about 3 mobs or so, you can go ahead and endlessly charge. The sprint has been, I guess, negated from Merciless Assault's charges. The fix that they've done is not actually with sprint. What I assume is they just fixed Merciless Charge to play like the text reads. So you have to hit unique targets now. Every target will reduce your cooldown by 2 seconds. So if you've done your math, it's 5 targets to reduce the cooldown to instantaneous. A lot of people have felt that this is quite a bit of nerf to the build itself. So for the people that have switched over recently, unfortunately this is going to be a big change. You're going to have to adjust your style to make it still work. Overall as a whole though, the build is still very solid. You basically still have a lot of tank ability in this build. I would suggest however in this new build, because a lot of the mobs have less hit points, they have less damage, forego a little bit more defense for offense if you can spare it. Go dual wielding if you can. The shield probably is no longer a necessary need. The only difference now is that charge is not spammable, so your playstyle has to cater around a little bit more kiting. I will go ahead and do some playthrough or play time for you to see the difference in how you should play the build. Now, I didn't make this video just to give you that info, because you could probably read it on the patch notes if you've gone to different forums on unlisted changes, because this was a silent change. You will probably find that out by now, and if you follow this build, you probably see me mention it elsewhere. So without further ado, the reason why I brought this video up today is because of this. When I seen the Barb patch notes before the patch even hit, or the official notes even hit, I noticed one thing. And one thing that I was personally looking forward to is that they've changed two-handed weapon rolls. And when I first rolled the Barb, that was my intention, was to roll a two-hander. The reason for it is because there are skills like Merciless Charge, and I was not taking full advantage of this skill prior. The reason for it is because it does not take attack speed into consideration, or even if it does, it's non-noticeable. It's the least amount of consideration for attack speed in any general skill possible. Maybe Rend and Seismic Slam will be the same, but Seismic Slam startup is noticeable if you use a quicker weapon versus a slower one. Charge might be the same way, but it's literally negligible. It's not a thing to worry about. So to take full advantage of it, I've always wanted to actually use a two-hander. However, we all know that prior to 1.0.4, two-handers are really bad. I mean, if you can wield a one-hander with the socket and another one-hander with a socket, if they both have innate crits and you put crit gems in them, a la Whirlwind Barbs, you're going to have a heck of a lot of damage, a lot more so than you can get with a two-hander. This has changed. Now damage wise, I think 2 one-handers are still gonna trump, maybe, unless you get the best of the best two-handers that are out there, and which are gonna be near impossible to find, but you are finding a lot of Barbs out there that have 2 good one-handers. So damage wise, they still probably are a little bit better. What's changed however is this. I found this today, and this is the first day of the patch and regular playthrough. This is what I ran into today. So take a good look at that. Look at the stats. When I first rolled it, instantaneously I knew what I had in my hand. The big number to look at is the life on hit, 1725. Even if you had 2 perfectly rolled one-handers, it's very hard to achieve something like this. I believe the max roll is 1928. I just did a little research before I started this video. It's 1900 something. It's an odd number. You also notice a 294 strength. That is huge. Now they used to hit 294 anyways, and I believe they go up to 500 plus now, so that can still be improved with another roll. On a single roll, however, that is probably one of the higher ones, because if you get a 500 roll, you're going to have 290 or like 300 plus another 2 something. So you need 2 rolls to achieve the maximum strength as per usual. The 33% damage is not the highest, nor is the arcane damage, and the minimum damage is really a wasted roll on this unit here, but I'll take it for what it's worth because it also comes with a 94% crit damage. Now this is not a weapon that you guys are going to just find hanging around somewhere. It's going to probably take some farming, maybe a little bit of a purchase to get something this good. I just got lucked out. I don't know why, but I guess they just wanted me to make more videos for you guys. So that dropped for me on the first playthrough. Actually, no, we played a couple of 3-player games. This is my first solo attempt. No, we found it in the first playthrough actually. And with this drop here, what it's changed the dynamic of is the lowered hit points on most mobs allows me to now one-hit them with this weapon. And if you guys remember from my previous videos, this was my weapon of choice before. Now look at the damage range. So under the DPS number, that range you see there, 593 to 1020, that's not a bad number. The only problem with this weapon is it gave me no extra damage from crits. So when I was using Frenzy and the likes, my regular attack damage was about, I think, 13,000 or like 16,000, somewhere around there. And then crits were up to about 40k. 50k. I was critting about 90k on a charge, and you really at that point needed endless charge to keep up with the damage to kill things effectively. Now what has changed now is that you see my current weapon that I'm equipped with, it's 907 base damage up to 1316 max damage. Now on my frenzy hits I'm critting 100k, and I think I've seen 180 on my charges, and because of the lower damage and also the lower hit points of most mobs, I could still one-hit things. And even occultists, those fat goat guys, the mages in Area Crater and beyond, those guys are less of a pain to deal with now. It used to take me about 3 minutes to kill them with the older weapon. Now I would say it's still a little bit of a longer fight, because right now my setup is atrocious. I have 26k hit points. I went through all of Act 3 with 1 death without skipping anything as well. But the fights used to take me about 3 to 4 minutes. Shielding mobs are a little bit more forgiving now because only one can be shielded at a time. That's another good change about 1.0.4. So kill speed, even with extra health, maybe down to 2-3 minutes at the most for the hardest mobs. For the easy mobs, I think they are even getting rolled over in like about 25 to 30 seconds. So my tip for you guys, number one, is to find something similar to these, because life on hit rolls on a two-handed weapon, ridiculous right now. Not only that, but here's the thing, I actually wanted to, instead of get life on hit, I actually wanted to get life converted, so I wanted to get life steal. And I believe they roll up to 6% on this weapon. If you could get that with a barb belt, you got 9% like you were dual wielding, and you could still roll a ridiculous life on hit. Those weapons are probably going to be treasures right now for any two-handed barbs out there. I already told a lot of people that after I was done with the last video, 1.0.4 is going to make me go toward a two-handed barb, because this is what I wanted to do from the beginning. However, luckily for me, because of the way that they've designed the rolls now, I didn't even have to change a thing. This build works perfectly for this right now. The only difference is you do have to go ahead and kite a little bit, aim your charges a little bit more carefully, but you achieve the same result. The other thing too that I've changed in my build right now, you can see I was at 29k DPS. I'm just going to put this back on to show you the difference. So I went from 29k up to 35k. I got a couple of pieces which I've upgraded, and I've done this ahead of time. The reason for it is because I really want to get a head start on the two-handed build, and I wanted to go ahead and try out the new Ren. And by the way guys, Ren is amazing. Ren basically keeps you alive better than Revenge right now. So if you guys are interested in doing kind of like a tanky build, give Ren a try. You just have to make sure that you are buffing yourself enough to get enough fury generated for you to use Ren endlessly. But more on that later. So what you see now is I made one change. Is I bought a belt like this. Something like this obviously isn't cheap. However, I had a very lucky, I guess, time with the purchase, because a lot of people like to save their bids until last minute. And patch 1.0.4 came between the time of when I placed my bid with like about 10 hours left. The announcement basically rolled in, and this was ticking down while the update was running. I lucked out. I ended up picking this up for, I think, 800k. I think I put 5 mil, and as you can see, 5 mil really, it's a small budget for me at the moment. I picked it up for 885k, I believe. This is a steal at under $1 million. I mean, look at the resistance, the life percentage, and the strength. Obviously, with the build that I'm doing, the Bulldozer Barb, you want to just stack strength. Even though right now I'm at 26k life, I don't care. Strength gives you armor, gives you mitigation, allows you to wear big weapons or wield big weapons. Strength is the #1 thing. My old belt actually was 147 strength, so this gave me quite a bit more of a boost in DPS. Second thing was when I sold my wand to give me this ridiculous amount of money, I wanted to flip some items on the real money auction house. However, because the search functions weren't working and people weren't looking at enough stats and things were hard to find, maybe the price was too high, this thing never sold. I actually bought this from the auction house. I believe 47k, or no, 47 million was what this ended up going for. Wanted to flip it on the auction house, but unfortunately it didn't get sold, so I decided to wear it. I had full intention, or if it didn't get sold, maybe I could wear it for my barb. Now, prior to this, I told you guys I never wore anything from the auction house. I only used it to flip, maybe the money to buy gems and whatnot. I decided to go against that after I beat Diablo, because now, after this build is published, there's been a lot of questions, and I just want to make sure that I could bring some endgame gear into these videos so you guys can see the full potential of something like this build here. I still got a lot of pieces that I can upgrade. I just don't feel that, you know, I should rush into it, because like this guy here has no strength whatsoever. It just has a lot of defense on it. However, it works with what I got right now. Most of this gear could still be upgraded, but at the same time I don't think it's necessary, because it still does a good enough job. And you guys could recall too, when I started the Bulldozer Barb, it was about budget. It's no reason to really, you know, if you guys saw the Whirlwind Barb and you're okay with it, please go with it now at 1.0.4. They not only buff Whirlwind, but they lower the damage of all mobs. One of the biggest issues before with the Whirlwind Barb is because you don't have enough life, or you don't have enough defense, because you're overcoming a lot of things by killing them fast enough. This build is now shifted toward that kind of mindset. If you guys could run a Whirlwind Barb, I honestly can't deter you from it, because on paper it is the best build out there right now. There's bar none. I mean, when Endless Charge was available, you could give Whirlwind Barbs a run for their money, because safety was definitely higher on this build. However, if you guys are switching to like a dual wield or two-handed setup, that might not be the case. So with that said, I mean, you know, if you don't like the playstyle, you don't have the gear still, you don't have this or that, and you still want to go ahead with something like this, then you can still go ahead and follow my guide and how to improve yourself. So this is the one thing that I purchased, and this is the other thing that I've changed from my last video. So when I add this guy here, which gives me another 300 almost worth of strength, you can see I'm up to 1960, which is a pretty respectable number. A number like this when I started Act 1 was pretty hard to reach. Nowadays you can do it, because let me show you some things here. I got a couple of items here. You guys won't believe this. I did this just because of the sake of time frame. I wanted to make sure I got something when 1.0.4 hit, but this belt, believe it or not, I got for $9,000. Yeah, 9,000. So it's not as good as the one I'm wearing, obviously, but for 9,000 it doesn't matter. So this is a deal that you can find from the auction house. You don't have to spend hours on it. All I did was I just punched in 250 strength minimum and put in all resist. Didn't care what the all resist number was. I just wanted some all resist, knowing that, you know, if I go with full strength, I could kill fast enough. I won't die that quickly. I've foregone vitality again, because this build, once again, is not going to need it if you kill fast enough. and you are still relatively safe. One of the other changes though on 1.0.4 that I didn't mention is leap. Leap now allows you to escape jailer effects. So even though you might lose your charge, and before jailer was a joke because they could never catch you, now they can, but now you have two tools to get out of it. You could use either charge or leap, and because both of which are going to give you an option. They will also generate tornadoes underneath you, so it's great for another heal. You don't really need a lot of defenses still with this build because the skills in themselves double with so much utility. So this is the one item that I purchased as a backup, and this piece here I got for 48k. Yeah, not 100k, not 150, not a million, 48k. So there's still people out there that are putting things on the auction house, really just don't know how to value their items. Something like this, I probably put $1 million out there, and with buyout, and it will probably be gone in the next second. So if you guys are lacking of strength, don't be discouraged to maybe spend about 5 minutes a day, just scour, to see what's new, what's out there. Auctions now get canceled too, so you definitely see a lot of people try to sell something. If it doesn't sell within the first hour, they might go ahead and drop it down again. I know a lot of people, when 1.0.4 hit, they were already scouring for deals. Right now the focus is going to be on weapons. You're going to see a lot of outrageous pricing for weapons, but armors are probably going to get neglected because of the slow sell rate. You're going to probably see them drop a little bit. I don't expect that 250 strength belts and shoulders to go that cheaply, but if you guys have a little bit more budget, honestly, these two items are the easiest to gain that. Now, on top of that, these belts here are also going to go ahead and give you a lot of armor. So this, for instance, the 257 strength is also equal to armor. If you look at the belt itself, it has 516 on it already. So you combine those two, you're going to get 773 with this belt alone. That's huge. That's almost as much as a chest armor, and not counting the strength. So you're going to be able to boost up your armor along with anything else, and if you have the rest to go with it, you're going to be unstoppable now in 1.0.4 because the monster damage is atrocious. In the first part of Act 3, like up to Gome, you could literally face tank most things under 30k health. And if you use Frenzy, and I still choose Frenzy, and with my two-hand build of choice, I usually like to go with Cleave. Only problem is that Frenzy still procs the best life on hit. Now if I had life steal, that's my ideal goal, is to have some life steal so I can free myself up from using smite on Frenzy and go with Cleave. And Cleave now has been boosted up to 175% on Broad Sweep, and Broad Sweep is gonna give me, I think, about 170 to 180k crits. It's right there with charge. In fact, it's so good you might even be able to replace it damage wise, so you don't have to endlessly charge to still deal the same amount of damage. The only thing is you still want charge because, once again, it's a CC break. So you definitely want that as a surround break as well. Just damage is one thing, but the utility is why charge is in this build. So moving forward with that is the other pieces that I have here is I usually carry something like this before my old build, and this is also a found item. This is a very good item, even for its time in 1.0.3. And you see that I stuck a crit gem in there to get as much damage as possible. Now you see, compared to my old weapon, it's got 541 more damage. Damage is not the big deal here. I used to want to run with this guy a lot. The only problem is, obviously, there's no way for me to heal myself. So for the longest time I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally 1.0.4 heard my pleas internally and basically gave me weapons that I can actually use. Now the reason why I used to have this in my inventory all the time is because of goblins. This fixed another weakness in the old build. So 1.0.4 gave you some, but they also took away, from this build. Well, what they gave you is another option now to wield two-handed weapons, and the added DPS, and basically, if you get a two-hander even like this, a 1.0.3 two-hander, which should start plummeting in price, you can go ahead and maybe go find something with lifesteal, maybe a 3%, and then add a belt that gives you 3%. That gives you 6. That's as good as finding a legit 1.0.4 weapon now. you can go ahead and use something like that and maybe get started in this build again. But the one thing that's changed dynamically now is that my main weapon, I don't have to swap anymore. I can go and kill any goblin. I haven't missed a single goblin. Actually, on my last run I did miss one, but that was right after Sidea, and there's usually a mob after Sidea, and that goblin got basically startled by the enchantress, and I can't fight the mob and that goblin with 26k life. I came to within about 5% of life before it disappeared, but I had to run for my own safety, so didn't want to rack up a second death on that run. So one goblin got away, but honestly speaking, even if they were in the open, because we have sprint, because Frenzy's going to build enough fury for you to continue sprint, and also smite every once in a while. It's going to slow down the goblin. If you aim your charges correctly and you cut off with leap when you do run out of fury, you will go ahead and catch the goblin 100% of the time, I guarantee it. So that's the other big thing that's changed for this build. The other things I want to show you too is that you guys will see that once again this is near end game gear. However, because of the new system where the Paragon levels, I'm already at level 5. As you can see, I just did like maybe about 3 runs, the Siege Breaker, and then 1 complete clear. You guys are going to start getting free magic finds, so I'm getting 15% off the bat. Items are going to come rolling in, and I think Blizzard is doing this not only to prolong the end game, but you guys know PvP is the upcoming patch, and how boring would PvP be if a lot of people are still stuck with Act 1 Inferno gear? So I think they're boosting a lot of this magic find to kind of prep themselves for 1.1. Last thing they need is more scrutiny on how 1.1 is going to get you PvP, but everybody's losing to everybody because nobody is on equal ground. So it's probably still going to happen, but I think the patch is more aimed toward prepping us toward that step, so that's a good thing. What I wanted to show you is I got a bunch of stuff here on the bottom. This is from my last run, and this one run through is starting to drop items that I think are pretty viable. I've got like 750 plus hours now. Before this, the drops were pretty atrocious still, and they still can be. However, for weapons, like they said in the developer blog, they are a lot better now. Now, ironically, I only have level 63 items. If you looked on Reddit, you see there was a thread about people crafting 62 items with 6 prop, and they're rolling 1k one-handers. So the items are out there, and you're gonna find more viable items out there. However, this is just a small collection from one run, and just to show you what I found is I found something like this. This is more than viable, in some situations, depending on if you have another belt. If you go dual wield, that conversion to life is a pretty good effects to have. Not everybody's going to find a lot of these things, but because of the way that they changed the roles on most of these items now, you are going to find more 800 to 900 base items on the regular, I would say. I found like about 2 exorcists, which are those one-handed crossbows. They're now sporting 8 to 900 pretty regularly. I think we found 3 just in the 2-3 runs that we did in Siegebreaker today. This is a helmet, and if you look at this guy, this is Beast. It's got a little bit less resistance. It loses a little bit of life, but basically what you can see here is if I had more vit, this percentage to life might even help me out. Currently it's flip-flop right now. I don't have enough vit to support it. I lose 300 armor, but this actually has strength. There might be a time, I'm going to save this right now, there might be a time where I could find another piece to replace something else, and basically this could go on top of that. So this is going to give me almost another 4,000 in damage, nearing 60k. So this is going to get me to a sweet spot. I still have an old Andes in my stash. That gives me about 8,000 more damage, but I lose about 1 point something protection, 1.8 I believe, compared to this mental abjuration, sorry about that. Defense for me is still key. I don't like dying still. I was playing around with some builds earlier and I died a lot. I just said screw it, you know what, this build still works, let me just play with this some more until I find more vit gear. Because running two-hand, you have to have vit. Just luckily with this build, you could still run it with 26k. Not too much of a problem. This helm, really good find. This is just done right before it fought Osmodan. This is another item, and if you can see here, this is not the best bow out there, but guess what? It's viable. If you have a demon hunter, this is something that you wouldn't mind having right now for most demon hunters. You could sell this on the auction house, and guess what? That's gonna buy you a shoulder, maybe a belt of some sort. I play with 3 Demon Hunter friends. All of them's got a little bit better of an item than this already, but I'm pretty sure not everybody does, so that's something just to keep in mind. You know, if you don't find something for your class, it's always going to be good for something else. After I bought my belt, then this dropped. This actually has a lot of vitality. Has fire resistance. Now, even though it doesn't have all res, I saved this belt because fire res, at least in 1.0.3, was the only res you had to care about. Most people think maybe arcane too, because arcane was so strong, but it was so strong that, you know, no matter what res you had, you got killed instantly. With fire, you actually would stood a chance. You could take mortars, you could probably, you know, walk at least on Molten for a short period of time. Firechains did less damage. It definitely was noticeable in 1.0.3 to have fire damage reduced on firechains. In 1.0.4, Molten's been nerfed to the ground. It barely hurts. I've lowered my resistances from like I think 950 something to like 8 something buffed or 7 something buffed, and it doesn't hurt anymore. Fire chains are a joke. So fire resistance, because the damage types, especially if you're preparing for a Diablo fight, is still the most common. 55 res on this one's not bad, and for a found item, this is sellable. With the Vit, I could use it right now. I just don't want to lose any more protection because my other belt that I purchased for 800k is a lot better, even though it doesn't have the armor. The strength more than makes up for it in most cases. This is another belt that I found as well. Not as great of a belt, but this is a good all-rounder, once again with fire and all res. So these are drops that I'm just getting from time to time, and you can see this is all from a collection of one run right now. And like I said, your mileage might vary. But if I were to put any of this on the market, guess what? I'm closing in on one of these guys. I looked on the market recently, and you get some good deals right now. I was searching for something that I would personally get still, and you could get like 1k life on hit with some crit damage of some sort, and also maybe about 3 to 5% life steal. Might not get the strength on there, and you'd be hovering around like maybe 12 to 1100 damage. Those things are going for maybe about 10 to 30 million for the reasonable ones. All the other ones, just ignore them, because nobody's going to buy something like this for 300 million. Most people are still going to build toward Whirlwind Barb, so that's going to give us a break if you guys are looking to play this build still, because you don't have to compete against those other guys basically buying, you know, $100 million weapons, $300 million weapons for one-handers. In my opinion, one-handers in this build hurts it more than it helps. So I'm really glad for that specific change, and I personally think that going forward, as you know, more two-handers hit the market and the supply outweighs the demand because there's not too many two-handed builds out there, well, guess what? This is going to fill that void. So without further ado, you guys heard me talk a lot. I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to go out, stir some trouble up like usual, and let you see what kind of damage you can do with 52k worth of damage base pre-buff. Of course, I have the Enchantress with me. I kind of need it right now due to the fact that I really get myself by not having my awesome shield once again. However, she's also buffing me with 3% attack speed. Now, attack speed is pretty big with the two-hander because this is a 1.0 attack. This is not bad. I've played with a two-hander for a long time in Act 2, so I've gotten adjusted to like 0.90, 0.95 attack speeds with no boost at all. It was brutal, but I killed things so fast back then. Right now my attack is at 1.15, so I got like 0.15 of a difference. And even with Frenzy, I don't know if they changed the animation, but it seems a lot quicker. I still have crit chance up to 31.5. Crit damage, mostly from this guy here, is up to 293. I did, you know, basically focus as much as possible to getting crit chance and crit gear, knowing that is the best way to go ahead and up your damage. And you see my resistances right now, they've faltered a little bit, and I'm just gonna buff it so you can see. Well, yeah, my fire resist is at 868 still. This is actually pretty hard to achieve with the two-hander, I can tell you guys right now. I think I was doing a no life on hit build a long time ago, maybe about a month ago, and somebody on the forums was like, oh yeah, I upped my damage to 30k with a two-hander and still, you know, kept 8,000 armor and 800 resist. At that time, I didn't think any way possible that I could have achieved it, but you know, with a few months worth of farming, you can achieve these results here. It just takes a hell of a long time to find. Now the only problem is I've foregone a lot of vitality to get to this point. You can see 26k worth of hit points, 4% to bonus life, no socket in the helm, anything like that, but life per hit. That's a beautiful number there. This is probably overkill for this right now. Now if I had more hit points, you could easily lower this a little bit more, so you could be in the 1300, 1200, maybe that area for a two-hander, support it with a ring or an amulet of some kind, and sitting there maybe about 1500, be super comfortable. But because of my low hit points right now, I have to have something this high to constantly replenish me. Tornadoes are amazing right now. I mean, even on frenzy, I think my per proc, or the half-second procs that comes up for healing, I'm looking at 1395, something like that. Sometimes I hit 2000, and that's on regularly just frenzying something. So if I'm there frenzying something and I'm spamming overpower, I literally face tank like I did with the sword and board, but I don't have to worry about doing low damage and prolonging the fight. The advantage too with 1.0.4 is there's no more enrage, there's no more heal, so taking a bit more risk for faster farm times actually does help with the two-hander as well. You lose a little bit of defense, you might die every once in a while if you're under geared still, but because now you could zerg the hell out of the mobs, it doesn't really matter. So right now all the other stuff basic. So once again, I'm going to pause the video here and I'm going to pick up later when I find a mob. Actually, scratch that. The reason why I say that is because not only are mobs going to be important to find out how to fight, but I would also like to show you guys also white mobs, because, you know, with the patch notes there, they've increased in hit points. Supposedly they're going to be harder, but I didn't really notice it with this weapon. You can see a single charge there literally killed one guy. And as far as my crits go right now, you're going to basically see them, you know, 20k for tornadoes and the rest of everything. Now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and line them up like we talked about prior. Just run in a straight line, get everything lined up, and you can see you still get instant cooldown pretty rapidly. And remember, sprint doesn't do anything for you to cool down now, but it does proc life on hit, so it's important that you still do all the tricks that you've learned from, you know, the other tutorial, but now you just don't spam it as often. And whenever I fight these tank guys here, these I think they call them brick houses in the patch notes, those things that enrage, or, you know, the full melee guys, I tend to proc overpower as much as I can now because of my kill speed. You can see that I just ran into him and comboed him with an overpower because of my crit chance. I have quite a bit of control over when I could proc it, and this allows me to basically mold through things. And you can see, you know, that crowd died instantaneously. Those, you know, stragglers, you could just leave them alone. Go ahead and find a mob. I fought 3 demonic tremor mobs with 26k health on the last playthrough, so, you know, the nerf on the damage is ridiculous. I mean, Inferno's becoming so easy now, they need to make an Ultra Inferno just to keep up with some of the guys that have high-end, you know, gear. My gear, I would say, is upper middle class. It definitely can use a lot more vit, but I tend to focus and specialize in what I'm looking for, so I know. And the other advantage now to fighting white mobs, aside from gaining experience, is that right there. See a level 62 axe there? Just drop down from a white mob. So having this high DPS now means you don't have to run through things, but you can kill them rather quickly. These demonic tremors, the regular guys, they basically have less tank time, or their arm shields are reduced, if you guys haven't read the patch notes. So another thing to help you guys out, basically to kill those things quicker, because they used to be a pain too when they're down to a single unit. And hopefully we run into something here. Now battlefield is, I would consider, an easy area for Bulldozer Barb. The reason for it is because even if you run into a hard mob, because there's so many white mobs around, you can usually drag them along to basically be your charge bait. So this is cool. We got a demonic tremor mob. Demonic tremors are nice because they're so dang big and they usually come in a big pack. You can go ahead and endlessly charge these guys still. I fought 3 mobs earlier. I believe one even had shielding, and you can see us kind of getting some clicky issues there. And I mean, look at the life. It's literally, you know, on my older videos you can see that it took me maybe about a minute or so to kill these guys. Now I can't even say their name 5 times and they're almost dead. So You guys got to really, keep an eye out on two-handed weapons. If you guys see some outrageous, do not sell them, keep them. If you guys like this build, this is where this build's going towards. In the future, if I find something with life conversion, so life steal, I might play around with changing some stuff around. Now, I tried Ren, and I talked about that earlier. Ren, if you like to be that face tank guy, you want to be there standing around like a monk, that's going to be something you want to look for in your weapon, because your weapon basically is going to give you not only lifesteal on those ticks, but you're also going to go ahead and get them from Rend itself at 9% with this kind of damage. And you got to remember too, another yellow item there, the shield. You're not going to get the nerf to your lifesteal like belts and weapon base and stuff like that from a skill. So you do get the full 9% benefit from the Rend lifesteal. The only thing with it is in 1.0.3 they generally don't do that much damage. Now it's been up to 700%. It's significant. I mean, if you multiply my hits 700%, it's 3 charges basically worth of damage. So you're looking at let's say 200k per charge. That's basically like 3.5 more of that. So you're looking at like about 700k, and that's over 5 seconds. But if you got a mob that's just giving you trouble, usually your bleed damage is going to kill them before they could even withstand the full 5 seconds. But you're going to get a massive amount of heals just by looking at them and walking away. The only thing with it is it's got a very short distance, so you do kind of have to face tank things. And I'm hoping I could find a flyer mob here, because those are the other ones that kind of give people trouble. Ever since I played Bulldozer Barb, demonic tremors became a joke. There's not a single demonic tremor mob out there that's ever gave me a close call, I would say. And the other nice thing about this setup here too is I like doing this, just leaping in, and a lot of times if you hit dead on the money, you can basically drop a big bomb enough to kill range mobs in a single hit. And right now, like I said, I'm running around with like about 53k damage buff, 8,000 armor, 800 res, so that sounds familiar. Once again, this is more end-game gear. I don't expect a lot of people that are following this build to have this kind of gear. However, this means that you can still do Act 2, maybe a little bit of early part of Act 3 before Battlefield, because the damage does up quite a bit here, and of course area crater is going to be up a bit more. I did die once to an impaler mob, and they had nightmare. That was pretty much a pain in the ass. Impalers, whenever they have nightmare, is going to be a pain. Their spears just tend to hit, it's almost instantaneous, but their projectiles are so fast. So I'm just going to try to finish this mob here and end the video. But you can see, I mean, what is that, like 3 charges? Done the life nerf on these guys are just ridiculous. And you can see, if you just basically give yourself a second or two to catch up with the old style of charges, you can go ahead and basically get that all squared off. You can still charge them enough times, or charges aren't an issue. And you can see they're almost at 2,500 heals from Frenzy alone, so I'm just going to get hurt here. So 12, 12, 12. Yeah, 1,200 per hit on Frenzy alone. And when I'm not sure how I'm getting these 25s when I do it here now, but take them as they come, basically. So as you can see, my weapon, it's overkill. You do not need the 1,700, I don't think, but you do want the attack speed to help you get more hits, to get more life on hit. So I would say focus not so much on crit gear. If you could focus on attack speed on this build, if you're shooting for something like this with the life on hit, use attack speed. If you're gonna focus on using life steal, focus on crit damage and crit hit. And those two will basically go ahead and keep you alive a lot longer. As you can see, I was starting to dip in life, but you start pushing some buttons and your life comes back. Well guys, until I find more gear, I think the build still works, it's still viable. I don't have as much fun as when I got Endless Charge, but honestly speaking, like I said, if you guys have the gear for Whirlwind, please by all means use it. It is so much quicker. But if you don't like the gameplay, the game style of it, that's the reason why I don't use it. Despite the fact that, on paper, I know it's quicker. I could use this weapon. In fact, this thing would be killer on a whirlwind barb. I just don't like the playstyle. I don't like, you know, holding down one button and then spamming the other two. This playstyle here gives me strategic points in which I can push a button. This is still my forte. I love doing this. In the future though, I do want to go play with something when I get lifesteal up with Seismic Slam. I still love the hell out of that dang spell. Just, it does nothing. All it is an attack. There's no utility to it. If you guys look here, you guys will notice that I have utility with everything on the skill bar. So this not only doubles from an attack, it also reflects damage. So you're going to ignore damage coming in. This is not only an attack, but it gives you a chance to run away from things that are speedy. Right now, I'll say Soul Rippers have made a big comeback because they have, I would say, gave me the most trouble with Molten and firechains in multiplayer. And Sprint saved my ass tons of times. Leap, of course, is a getaway on top of a damage, on top of extra armor, so this is a triple threat. Shout Impunity, can't get rid of this. It does no damage at all, but it gives you Fury. On top of that, it gives you 50% resistance. Like I said, even if it doesn't have armor from the last video, everybody knows this is a staple. Frenzy's here because you're synergizing this with Life on Hit. Is still the best Life on Hit option that you have. Now the damage is not the greatest, but I chose Smite. As you can see with some of these videos here, when you're chasing kiters, goblins, Smite is your best friend. Stuns are amazing when you're using a slow weapon like, you know, an axe. You do want to stun them a couple of times if you have lower Life on Hit to get the Life on Hit back. And you also notice Furious Charge. Everybody knows this is a jailbreak right now, and Leap is a jailbreak, so that's a quadruple threat there. This is a surround break. You know, this is going to be high damage. This is your AoE. So everything on the skill bar has 2 or 3 different uses. I just want to, like, you know, close with one other thing too. Is 1.0.4 so far has a lot of positive changes. The one thing that I would say that they've kind of missed the mark on is build diversity, and I didn't fully agree with the way that they took that approach in buffing skills damage basically to try to achieve diversity. The reason why skills and some of these skills here suck, so let's say we take a look at Threatening Shout. It's worse than Stomp in most cases. Some people like to incorporate these, but any of these runes here, other skills do better. And skills like Battle Rage, you know, this is a requirement for some builds. That's the only reason why people use it. Some people like the extra damage bonus, but honestly, if you're picking the right skills from the get-go, like Charge, 195, you don't need a 30% boost. You don't need a 15 plus whatever it is that you're doing here, but the only reason why people use is obviously is Into the Fray. Then you also have skills like Seismic Slam. Once again, this is all it does is a damage deal. It does knockback too, but immediately they're not stunned. They're not, you know, like Wave of Force for a wizard. They come running right back at you. So if you're doing this to a fast pack, it's useless. That knockback it's just useless. Rumbles are pretty good features, but it's a random spot on AoE. Once again, all it does is damage. There's no, unless you're using Stagger. I don't think Stagger is worth the Fury or the Fury cost for stuns, but you know, to each their own. And I just don't see this being a necessity on a build like this, or you don't have enough skill slots to put something in like this, because survivability goes down whenever you have a skill that doesn't back you up for a second reason. Hammer the Ancients, I know there was a thread on Reddit too where people were trying to use the Devil's Anvil because it has a slow effect. That slow effect is kind of like a mini AoE that does no damage, but the proc rate was at 1.0 before. The patch note has nerfed it down to like sub, I think, 1%. It's now useless as far as a Into the Fray generator. So the build that they were trying to go around with this is nerfed. I tried running around with Hammer the Ancients. The 406% is probably going to be the rune that I choose if I were to run it. And I would want to run it with a two-hander. I wouldn't do it with a one. It just, per cast damage is not high enough. With my regular 32k DPS, you're doing 222k crits. And yeah, the skill right now, it's once again pure damage. There's no utility in it. This is the reason why spenders are horrible. Of course, outside of Whirlwind and Rend. The only problem with something like Rend is it'll be a heal and it'll be an attack. The only problem with it is it still doesn't let you escape. And if you were using Rend along with Sprint, you're not going to be able to spam both all the time unless you put in, once again, Battle Rage into the fray. So now that's going to take up 3 slots in your bar, and you're not going to have either charge or leap. And because these are cooldown based items and they're your jailbreaks, you could forego them and put in Wrath of the Berserker. And if you have Wrath of the Berserker, you're going to try to go ahead and put in as much Fury as possible to get it as long as possible with Thrive on Chaos. And at that point, you might as well just use Whirlwind. That's the reason why Whirlwind is so strong. It's a mobile thing. It synergizes with Sprint. Rend does not. You're not moving, and if you're casting Sprint, you can't cast this. So this is the reason why skills suck. Not because of their damage, not because of anything else, but because of their double utility, because of their synergies. And the reason why that I'm against the way that they buffed, spenders is they didn't do anything else for us. So let's say if we were to buff something like, because Revenge, we know a lot of tanky barbs still use Revenge, but let's make this like a breaker along with overpower for Frozen. So if you were to cast overpower and or Revenge, let it break Frozen. Let us get out of that, because Chain Frozen's still in the game and it's kind of ridiculous. Give it more utility so other people could incorporate these. Weapon throw, give something back. Maybe give you added run speed while you're throwing a weapon, and have that innate, so you don't have to couple it with Sprint, something like that. And to me, I think if you add a little bit more utility than just something like that. Now, weapon throw is not weak on its own, because 1.0.4 has provided a lot of help to ranged barbs. So I would hold this basically as a pretty buff stat already. This with Javelin, because the one biggest thing that they've changed, and this is the step in the right direction. They changed the mechanics. When you have weapon throw now without Fury enough to cast it, you have a normal attack. What does that mean for you? You don't have to put a main attack and a weapon throw on your right click, because if you had weapon throw on your main attack and no Fury, you can't attack anything. Now they fixed it and changed it so you save the slot. That's how you boost a utility of an item, and that's how you make it better. So if Blizzard watches, and if they see this, or if you guys catch it here and you guys start spreading the word, in my opinion, they need to make things more interesting, not in just the way they do damage. We got a lot of ways to do damage already, and basically add more utility to it. And if Ren was a base snare, on top of which, then you might not need Sprint to run away. Then it could fully replace Sprint if it was a strong enough snare on its own that you can actually get away from your mob that you're fighting and leech off that life. Things like that would fix the skill. You could add this 1000%, but if you're stuck where you are and your healing over time isn't going to take over, you're dead. So you can't put this in there without sacrificing some sort of survivability. This is the reason why that these don't work. So I'm gonna leave this rant, as far as this now, because 1.0.4 has a lot of goods to give. I have yet to find a legendary yet, but when that comes, it's gonna be party time, because like I said, I'm content with this build. I'm not happy with it like the way that I was in 1.0.3, because despite the fact Act 3 was harder then, I found it to be more fun and easier. Despite the mobs are easier now, I still find it easy. I just don't think it's as much fun. I do like the Paragon system. It gives me something to look forward to. I like seeing my massacres and things occur in me experience. And basically, until I find more items, like I said, this is probably one of the last videos again for a while. And I'll see you guys next time, and thank you for the support. Take care.